Well, good evening and welcome, everybody. My name is Jonathan, and I'm the minister here at Christ Church. And I'm very pleased to be hosting the first of our seminar series, God's Better Story. I met Pete about 6 months ago, and I've been looking forward to getting this started and underway ever since then. So it's really good that you've travelled to be here. And thank you too for coming on quite a nasty, cold evening. Thank you for coming out. This is being recorded. We weren't promising this ahead of time, but we hope we can now get all of these series recorded. So if you want to go back and over something that Peter said afterwards, you can do that. And of course, welcome to those of you who are watching us this way. I hope you get as much out of this through the recording as we're going to in the building. Pete is somebody who knows the times, which is important in these days. He has been a church minister. He's a family man, and he knows better than most of us the way that AI is getting into all the areas of our life already, and it's only going to increase, isn't it? So I'm really pleased that you've come to start us on this road of thinking, how do we speak with grace and truth about some of these most important things, these ethical and topical questions. So I'm going to pray for us and then explain how we're going to do the evening. So let's pray. Father God, we thank you that all that you intend for us is good. As we have grappled with different technologies over the centuries, Lord, we pray for your guidance tonight. Help us see what is good and what needs to be resisted. Father, we thank you for the preparation and the experience that Pete has. Help him to speak clearly and for us to understand all that he's going to be saying to us. And as we have short times of discussion and the question and our answer time afterwards, guide us all, we pray. In Jesus' name. Amen. So we aim to finish at about 9:15, but otherwise I'm handing over to Pete. Thanks.
Thank you, Jonathan. Well, good evening, everybody. Just echo my welcome to what Jonathan's already said. It's really great to see all of you. Thank you for coming out this evening as we look at this topic of AI together. So we can jump to the first slide, the Stephen Hawking one, the great prophet of the 20th century in many ways. Stephen Hawking, he once said, the full development of full AI could spell the end of the human race. Once humans develop AI, it will take off on its own and redesign itself at an ever-increasing rate. Humans, who are limited by slow biological evolution, couldn't compete and would be superseded. So the development of full AI could spell the end of the human race. Is he right, or is AI in fact a wonderful opportunity, that the next frontier to be crossed that will take us to new heights? Or maybe you think it's all a bit of overblown hype. Well, like I say, I'm really glad you're here tonight. Perhaps I'll just tell you a little bit about who I am so you can put this all into context. I work for a charity, next slide, called CARE. That's Christian Action, Research and Engagement. For 40 years, we've been based in Westminster, just across from the Houses of Parliament, and our vision is to see politics renewed and lives transformed. If you think that the church's main goal is to preach the gospel, but as you go through the Bible, Old Testament and New, we see that loving your neighbour is not limited just to caring for their spiritual needs, but love includes seeking good government and campaigning for better laws, and that's what we're about at CARE. So we divide our work into three main areas. We equip politicians to stand up for the weak and vulnerable in Parliament by providing briefings and reports. We engage with churches, we work closely with church leaders, we partner with churches, we come and do things like I'm doing tonight, and we empower future leaders. So we have a leadership program where we take recent graduates, we give them opportunities to work in Parliament, we give them training. And as Jonathan's already alluded to, we're all about truth and grace, being salt and light and being driven by love. In relation to AI, at CARE, we have worked alongside leading ethicists and academics. We've particularly looked to help Christians establish a theology of AI. We've done some work in Parliament, hosted parliamentary events. We've attended briefings in the House of Lords. We've submitted parliamentary questions, all on the subject of AI. I'm not an AI specialist. I'm not a computer scientist. My degrees are in economics and theology. But my expertise is looking at the interaction between theology and the world around us, knowing our times, as Jonathan has said. And then equipping the church to do the same. So tonight isn't the definitive word on AI. Think of it like, and all these sessions, like the start of a conversation. The start of a discussion to help Christians think through these issues. So tonight, to help us think through this new technology. And next slide, we're going to, just so you have a bit of a roadmap, have three main sections tonight. And there'll be a couple of discussion times, and we'll have some time for some questions at the end as well. But we're going to look at AI from three different angles, tell three stories. Number one is a story of progress, the rise of AI. What is it? How does it work? What does it do? Because it really is incredible. Second story will be a story of peril, the risks of AI. Why is it dangerous? Why are we hearing so much about it in the news? Why are politicians concerned? Does it have the potential to unravel society as we know it? And number three, against the backdrop of these competing stories, we're going to look at the Christian story, God's better story. How does AI fit? And what are some uniquely Christian ways we should be thinking about AI? What can Christians bring to the debate? But before we go any further than that, next slide, what I'd love for us to do is to take a few minutes, just in groups, to think about some of the ways you currently use AI in everyday life. Let's say 3 minutes with whoever's sitting next to you. Just what are some of the ways you currently use AI in everyday life? See how many you can think of. Back to a close. I'll ask if anyone wants to feedback. Just before I do that, I will just give you a heads up. I am hard of hearing and kind of part deaf, so forgive me if I have to ask you to repeat yourself at any point. But anyone wants to volunteer anything you came up with?
Yeah.
Yes?
It could otherwise be called artificial stupidity.
Artificial stupidity. Yes, I suppose in many ways that's scary because it's even more like humans in that it can be both intelligent and stupid, can't it? Yeah. Anyone else?
There's some brilliant software to enhance old photographs,
Yeah.
to colour them and bring them alive. Whether the colours were actually those colours, we don't know, but it's pretty impressive.
Yeah, and do you use that yourself?
I want to start using it on some old photographs, which is my big
Yeah. That's brilliant, isn't it? Yeah. Anyone else? Maybe one more? Alexa. Yeah.
It's extremely useful for design processes. So with artificial intelligence, it's quite easy to replicate the output of a given design, or the result of a given design, and then prevent errors before they actually occur. So you can use it as a tool for safety, for example. So it has got some real benefit.
Yeah.
In those processes.
Absolutely. And hands, maybe a show of hands. Anyone use ChatGPT? ChatGPT, please write me a talk on AI to give at Christchurch, Chineham. Anyone use AI with work?
Sorry?
Anyone use AI at work? Yeah.
Yeah, I use it in design.
Yeah. Jonathan, you use AI at work as for your work as a vicar. How do you use it?
I have not used it to write sermons, but I have used it for image generation to limited success. I have used it to generate prompt questions from a sermon that I had written to very great effect.
Yeah.
So it does depend what you're asking it to do, but if you've got good quality inputs, then it can do some remarkable things, I think.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Just enter it, give it the text of your sermon, come up with 3 insightful questions that would be useful for a home group to discuss. You then want to review them, don't you think? Now, are these any good? But it can be incredibly useful. So I think what we're seeing is AI is everywhere already. And I want us not to see it as some ethereal, mystical, futuristic technology. It's already here. When you're on Amazon and it's suggesting products it thinks you might like, that is a form of AI that is looking at your previous purchases, analyzing the purchases of millions of other people and saying, based on all that information, I predict that he might want this. And sometimes the predictions are brilliant and sometimes the predictions are terrible. So the phrase AI is often used as a scaremongering news headline or a marketing tool. Samsung's new phone, it's the Samsung Galaxy AI. Well, they've had AI in their phones for years, but it's a marketing tool. But the reality is it's everywhere and we're using it all the time without thinking. But what is it? Well, next slide. As humans, our brains are made up of neurons. So tiny nerve cells in our brains that produce electrical signals. And the average human brain has 86 billion neurons. And they connect to one another, creating what's called a neural network, and send signals to one another. And in some way that scientists can't yet understand, from the electrochemical signals that neurons are sending to one another constantly, out of that flows our consciousness. Now, as computer science has advanced, in recent years, we've developed microchips that mimic that structure of the human brain. Instead of neurons, there are transistors, and as many as not as 86 billion, but 134 billion, I think, is the most they've managed to put onto one microchip. And these transistors are built in a form that mimics the human brain in a neural network, and they're sending electrical signals to one another, and out of that comes not consciousness, but computing. And so you've got these incredibly powerful computing units with structures like the human brain, and then what comes next is called supervised learning. So computer scientists, again, they feed this computer with unimaginably large quantities of data, words, images. So just as if you wanted to learn something new, you would read a book, perhaps. If you want the AI model to learn something new, you feed it with 1 million books. And just as the human brain is able to, as the more and more information we gather about the world, the more we learn to sort and classify objects in our minds, the AI processor is also able to sort and classify objects. So once you've fed this AI with, say, 1 million pictures of cats and 1 million pictures of dogs, and you've told it each time, this is a dog, this is a cat, this is a dog, this is a cat, and then what you can do is give it another picture, not tell the AI what it is, but it's able to determine, because it's seen 1 million by this point, it's able to classify and say, with 98% certainty, that image is a cat or a dog or neither. So now we've got computer programs that are able to classify existing text and images. And then the next step in the evolution of AI is called generative AI. So having fed it with 1 million pictures of cats, you could then ask it to come up with a picture of a cat. And unlike Google just searches the internet, finds an example of what you're looking for. Generative AI will create. It will generate a brand new picture of a cat that has never existed before. Now, it's still not perfect. Wouldn't surprise me if you asked it to generate a picture of a cat and it gave you a cat with 3 legs or 2 heads. It's still not perfect, but it is advancing at such a fast rate. It is getting better and better. And it's not just images, it does exactly the same with text. So it's fed with words from books, from libraries, from research papers, from news websites, from social media, from all over the internet. And then you ask it a question, and based upon the billions of words that it has been fed, it then is able to generate an answer to that question, based on all the information it has, which is vastly more than all the information you or I could ever have processed. It comes up with the answer. And that's ChatGPT, that's what it does. The G stands for generative, the P for pre-trained, which means that it's already been fed all the billions of terabytes of data. We don't have to do that every time we want to ask it a new question. And the T is for transformer, which is a technical term about the type of machine learning. Now, is that all actually intelligence? No. The word artificial is an important word. It's not real intelligence. It's not thinking for itself in the way that we understand what thinking is. But it is, so it's artificial intelligence, but it is artificial intelligence. It is mimicking intelligence. It's able to spot patterns and reach conclusions that would, if a human were doing it, that would be called intelligence. In fact, there's many things that AI can do better than humans because it can handle vastly more data than we can. So, for example, AI is better at spotting lung disease from MRI scans than even the best doctors, because AI has been fed with so many MRI scan images, and for each one it's been told whether there is a disease or not, that it's now seen more MRI scans than the best doctor there is, and so it is able to spot patterns in lungs that even the doctor might not be able to. Now, that's not intelligence at one level, but it is artificial intelligence. So we've got this incredible new tool in the world of computing, artificial intelligence, and one of the most amazing things about it is the way that when it's fed with enough data, I've said this already, but it feeds on data, it lives on data. The more data you give it, the better it gets. It then even gets to the point where it's able to self-improve beyond the intelligence of its creators, beyond even the data it was initially trained on. So let me tell you about a milestone in AI, and that's in an ancient game called Go. So, start with noughts and crosses. Noughts and crosses is a really simple game. Children can learn it, play it, and pretty soon you can work out how never to lose at noughts and crosses. And you can train an AI machine to play. You explain that its goal is to win, and at first it will place its noughts and crosses randomly, and that doesn't help it win. And so as it plays game after game, it learns what strategies are most likely to lead to a win. It repeats those strategies, and within a few seconds of training it, it has learned every tactic. It knows how to respond to every possible move you could make in noughts and crosses. But that's pretty simple. At any given moment, there's only between 1 and 9 places on the board you can go. There's only 23 possible final outcomes for the board, so that's easy for AI. Scale it up to the next level, scale it up to chess. It's much more complex, isn't it? At any given moment on a chessboard, there are usually between about 25 and 40 possible moves that you could make. And the number of possible final outcomes for a game of chess is a number with 110 zeros after it. That means there's more possible outcomes in the game of chess than there are atoms in the universe. So it's a more complex challenge for AI, isn't it? It takes more data to train. But perhaps some of you might know this, the big milestone when the AI supercomputer beat the world champion Garry Kasparov was back in 1996. But chess is simple compared to the game of Go. So Go is about 2,500 years old. It's much more popular in Asia than it is in this country. And in Go, I don't know how to play it, I don't understand it, but the average number of possible moves at any one time, it's not 25, it's not 40, it's about 250. 10 times the complexity of chess. And the number of possible outcomes in a game of Go is a number with 360 zeros after it, that's so big that you can't really get your head around it. It's like if every atom in the universe contained another universe with every atom in the universe, that would still be less than the number of possible outcomes in the game of Go. So beating a human at Go became a goal for computer scientists. Can we train an AI machine that can beat a human? And they developed this machine called AlphaGo. AlphaGo accessed and analysed the entire online library of Go, every match that has ever been played that's been recorded, all the players, analysed all the literature as well as games. It then played against itself, so then it could practice against itself, get better, practice against other humans, and so on. Back in 2016, Elon Musk predicted AI still had another 10 years to advance before it would ever be able to beat a human player. Beating a human at Go was described as the holy grail of artificial intelligence. 2 months after Elon Musk made that prediction, AlphaGo beat the world champion, Lee Sedol, 4-1. But what was amazing to a lot of observers, it wasn't just that, we've got this amazing new machine that can be accurate and efficient with its moves and always beat a human, never make mistakes, playing almost perfectly. That was all a given. What was amazing to the observers was that it invented and developed strategies for how to play Go that no human player had ever come up with. The world champion was talking afterwards, after his defeat, and he said about one specific move at one point in the game, he said, I thought AlphaGo was based on probability and calculation, and I thought it was merely a machine. But when I saw this move, I changed my mind. AlphaGo is creative. It was creative and beautiful. And so what you've got now is artificial intelligence that you train it to play a game, you train it based on humans playing the game, and it learns to play it in a way better and more beautiful than any human ever did. So unlike an old-fashioned search engine that's just looking for answers on the internet, it's able to come up with answers that go beyond the intelligence of its creators, beyond the data it was trained on. And I've spent a long time researching AI, looking at AI in the last few months, and it is just incredible. I had to cut out so much. I could have spent like about 2 hours just on some of the incredible features of AI and the potential benefits of this technology. It's not about beating someone, it's an ancient game, but in healthcare, AI can assist in early disease detection before humans can identify the signs. It can search and evaluate millions of pages of clinical trial data in seconds. It used to take one PhD student 5 years to analyze the structure of one protein, which helps with drug development, new vaccines, that kind of thing. It would take one PhD student 5 years to do one protein. AI has now mapped the structure of all 200 million proteins known to man. That's 1 billion years worth of research done. In education, AI can provide personalized learning experiences. It can make education more accessible, more engaging, more effective. It can help students at the exact point where they're struggling and targets the learning accordingly. For the environment, it can help us optimize energy consumption, reduce waste, improve resource management. It can optimize crop management, improve yields, monitor livestock health, contribute to global food security. It can be used to improve road safety and reduce accidents. I don't like the idea of self-driving cars, partly because I actually quite like driving, and it feels weird to me, the idea of a self-driving car, and you read the odd headline about a self-driving car that hits someone, but actually the number of accidents from self-driving cars is vastly lower than cars driven by humans. And when this becomes more and more mainstream, self-driving cars will be able to see things that humans don't notice. They will be able to react before humans are able to react. They won't get tired and drift off the road. AI can do instantaneous language translation. This is a feature actually released on the new Samsung phone. It sounds like I'm advertising Samsung, I'm really not. But on the new Samsung phone that came out last month, they now do live translation. I'm told it's not that good. See, I'm not advertising them. But basically, you can have a conversation with someone in another language, and you will hear what the other person said, but in your own language, live, just through your mobile phone. And as you come on to translation, think about the impact of that for global mission. We've got Bible translators working around the globe, looking to translate the Bible into every known language, often working in extremely dangerous places. AI will be a wonderful tool in helping them to do that work. It can help with city planning, managing traffic, designing urban infrastructure more efficiently. It can be involved in disaster prediction, emergency response. It can analyze financial data, better fraud detection, better risk assessment. So I really want to emphasize AI is not just, it's ChatGPT, it's not just that stupid AI bot that pops up on the website when you go onto a company and you think, I just want to talk to a human. Now, AI is already so powerful when used well that it's able to accomplish far more than humans are able to with our own intelligence. It's truly transformational. The co-founder of Google DeepMind, that's Google's AI division, a chap called Demis Hassabis, he said their goal is to solve the problem of intelligence and then use intelligence to solve everything else. So AI is kind of promised by the tech gurus as offering the solution to every human problem. So, what will it be able to achieve next? I asked ChatGPT this. I said, well, what will AI be able to achieve in 10 years? And I asked it to list me 5 points, and I said, that's great, be more ambitious. And I kept on telling it, and it kept on giving me an answer. I kept on responding, be more ambitious, be more ambitious, be more ambitious. And, it was predicting every volcanic eruption, every earthquake and tsunami, resolving global conflicts, helping us to eradicate poverty, conquering space and all sorts of things. AI could be able to do some of those things. It's a testament to human progress, and as Christians, we say progress and this technological development, it is good. It's what we were made to do, if we jump to the next slide. In the very first chapter of the Bible, Genesis 1, God creates the world, then he creates humanity, male and female, to live in the world, and he gives a command, a mandate, a goal for what humans are to do now we're in this world. Genesis 1:28, God blessed them and said to them, "Be fruitful and increase in number. Fill the earth and subdue it. Rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky and over every living creature that moves on the ground." So there's two halves to that. The first is to be fruitful and multiply. The second half is to rule, to have dominion. And that's not in an exploitative way, although humans have often done that. But the idea is it's in the same way that God rules over the world. It's in a generous, sustainable way. And this creation mandate that we're given, sometimes called the cultural mandate, it inevitably involves technology and invention. The story of technology, it starts with the first humans throwing a rock at a bird to kill it for food. The rock is a tool in that moment. It's a form of technology. Or maybe fashioning a spade or some digging device to work the ground. And it progresses through the Stone Age and Bronze Age and Iron Age. There's the discovery of fire, the invention of the wheel. Genesis 4:22, we read about Tubal-Cain. He forged all kinds of tools out of bronze and iron. The story of technology continues throughout the Bible. Jesus himself was a carpenter. He's using the technology of hammers and nails to create tables and chairs. There's the technology of writing on cave walls, the invention of papyrus, the printing press in 1450, each one changing the world. And all the raw ingredients for each of those technologies are found in the earth that God has given us. And it's for us. We are creative beings made in the image of God. We are to discover them and use them, to be creative just as our God is creative. And AI is just the next step down that road. So there's a theoretical physicist and mathematician called Freeman Dyson. No relation to James Dyson of vacuum cleaner fame. But Freeman Dyson said, technology is a gift of God. After the gift of life, it is perhaps the greatest of God's gifts. Now, as a Christian, I just got to interject there. Say the greatest of God's gifts is, of course, Jesus Christ, his son. But that being said, it is the mother of civilizations, of arts and of sciences. The story of AI is incredible. It's a story of progress, the next step down this road. So I don't think it's overblown hype. I think it really is spectacular. But that's not the whole story, is it? There's another way of telling the story of AI, which is a story of peril. So we're going to look at the risks of AI, and I'll just tell a couple of Greek myths, and then we'll have another break just to talk about what some of the risks might be. So the first Greek myth, Pandora's box. Pandora, the first woman, supposedly, she's given a box by the gods, told never open this box. That's not going to work, is it? So she's overcome by curiosity. Of course she is, I would be. She eventually opens the box, but in doing so, she releases all the world's evils, sickness, sorrow, greed, all pours out into the world. And in fear and panic, she slams the box shut, but it's too late. Because once you open the box, there's no putting those things back into the box. And so one way of thinking about AI is with AI, have we or are we about to open a box that we can't shut? Or separately, next slide, Icarus. He's the son of Daedalus, a skilled craftsman. They were imprisoned on the island of Crete, and to escape, they fashioned wings made of feathers and wax. But despite his father's warnings, Icarus flew too close to the sun. He caused the wax to melt, and that led to his tragic fall into the sea. So have we flown too close to the sun with this technology? Are we going to get burned? Or maybe not even a Greek myth, maybe a Bible account. Genesis chapter think it's 11. If it's not, it's 10. The Tower of Babel. Humans using technology as a way to say to God, we don't need you. We can replace you. Let us make a name for ourselves. Let us reach up to heaven, see what we can achieve on our own. We don't need your protection. We'll protect ourselves. We'll glorify ourselves. God came down and scattered them because he said, if they're able to do this, what more might they be able to do? So there's risks involved in AI, and perhaps let's just take a couple of minutes now just to chat about that in our groups. Again, what are your biggest worries about AI? You may not be worried. You may be like, absolutely nothing, no fears at all, but I think for many people there are some worries. What are your worries? Let's take 2 or 3 minutes.
how AI will accelerate that process. And I think an IMF did an article about how it can be used to drive financial policy.
Understanding what it's coming up with? Are they checking it? And sometimes it'll make financial decisions that are so fast that we don't have time to look into that. Anyone else? Yeah, at the back.
A lack of consciousness.
A lack of consciousness in what sense?
So AI, I think the way it's marketed is actually the way it's talked about as it's almost like a mystical thing that just does its own thing. But all it's doing is analysing patterns and coming up with those patterns based on
AI has no sense of right and wrong. It has a sense of patterns, and it will guess the next things that are coming. There's no sense of truth. It has no idea that is true, that is not true. It just says, based on my patterns and algorithm, there's a 97% chance that this is the next word in the pattern, the next pixel in the picture. Yeah. Anyone else? Yeah.
What you said about truth, like the ability to construct like environments of like, text to image and text to video and all stuff that you can make it seem like lies are the truth. You could generate a video of something that never happened and then claim that it was true and that it happened and influence people that way.
Yeah, that's massive. We're going to come to that later because I think that's a massive problem and a massive threat to our democracy, I think. Yeah. Do I see a hand over here? Jonathan?
Potential inequalities
Yeah.
for those who can't afford to access it and use it that fall further behind.
Yeah, I think a lot of the experts expect the richest nations to benefit more from AI than the poorest nations. There's already huge inequality in the world, and it's likely to increase that. And it's sold to the richest nations. This is going to solve Britain's productivity problem, and it's going to help us get growth with an aging population. That's great, but is that going to increase global inequality? Probably. Yeah. One more?
Man's capacity to create evil.
Yeah, man's capacity to create evil.
Invention and technology we ever had. Yes, they can be for good, but there are almost always
Yeah,
opportunities.
and we'll come to that, but I think when you have small technology, you're able to do, with the same human heart, you have a limited reach about how much damage you could do. But, the bigger and more powerful the technology, the more damage you can do to others and to millions and billions. Yeah. I think what I've tried to do in the next little section as we talk about some of the risks of AI, so let's jump onto the next slide, is divide the risks into a few different categories. Now, the big one for some people is civilizational risks, the destruction of humanity as a result of AI. This is the fear of sci-fi, isn't it? It's years and years ago, Terminator. The AI becomes more and more advanced until it progresses from intelligence to self-awareness. And the exact moment of self-awareness is described, and this military AI system becomes self-aware and immediately perceives humanity as a threat. And it knows that humanity will try and cut it off. So in an act of self-preservation, Skynet, this military AI, launches a global nuclear attack, leading to a cataclysmic war between humans and machines. It's with the end of humanity, or it's the Matrix, or it's Ultron from the Avengers. He becomes sentient, and he concludes that the only way to bring peace to humanity is to eradicate humanity, which has a perverse logic to it. And those are all stories of the creation usurping the creator, which is ironic given the Bible story, isn't it? And how sin is basically us trying to take our creator's place. But AI rising up, becoming self-aware, destroying us all. I don't think that's the biggest risk. Most experts don't think that's the biggest risk. I think we can keep that one for sci-fi films. It's not to say there aren't other risks. So let's try risk number 2. And that is that this amazing technology can be used for evil rather than for good. So we've seen this throughout history. We just said the discovery of fire, amazing for cooking, but now you can light the tip of an arrow and you can fire it into the enemy camp. The invention of the wheel, amazing for transportation, for farming, and also wonderful for wheeling chariots and cannons. Development of nuclear power, a source of energy that's so much more powerful than fossil fuels, yet nuclear weapons. And the longer we go on, the more and more powerful technologies we develop. And that has meant that the good we're able to do with them is greater. But so also is the evil they can be used for. And I think there's a few different ways these technologies can and will and are already being misused that it's good for us to be aware of. So firstly is at the government level. AI can be used to supercharge surveillance. So this is already happening. It's not just facial recognition anymore. AI can now analyze your gait. It can analyze the way you walk. It can combine that with your height, skin color, and so on. And at one level, that's great because you can use it to help catch fugitives and criminals. And at another level, as has been documented, is happening in China, it can be used to enhance the oppression of entire groups of people. There's been lots in the news about China's oppression of the Uyghur people. There are networks of surveillance cameras that look for Uyghurs based on their appearance, height, skin color, the way they walk. It keeps records of their comings and goings for search and review, and then they're tracked, controlled. Some are sent to re-education camps, some are killed. All made quicker and more efficient with AI. Government misuse. Next type of misuse is at the corporate level. Think of gambling addiction. It's become a massive problem in our nation in the last decade, mainly due to the rise of online gambling. At CARE, we're one of the leading campaigners for tougher regulation for online gambling companies. But these companies use AI to maximize their customers' engagement. Or put it another way, they use AI to make their products as addictive as possible, personalizing them and tailoring them for every individual customer. That's corporately using AI to increase profits at the cost of humans. These are all serious things, but an area of misuse, again, we feel particularly strongly about at CARE is in the area of democracy. So 2024, it's the election in the UK. It's the biggest election year in the history of the world. 2 billion people going to the polls around the world this year. UK, US, India, Russia, if you call that an election. The EU, 64 different countries have got elections this year. And now, could AI be used to undermine democracy? Well, absolutely. If you want to influence an election, AI just gives you a whole new toolkit. There's the advent of deep fakes. So deep fake is where you use AI to create a video or audio of someone, a fake video of a real person. Audio is easier for obvious reasons, but Microsoft have developed this tool where if you play it 3 seconds of someone's voice, it can then analyze your audio patterns, analyze the profile of your vocal cords and so on, and it can then, with just 3 seconds of data, it can then make it say anything it wants in your voice. With video, it's harder, but a few hours of speeches, AI maps the way your mouth moves, the way your lips move, your gestures, and it can then create, for example, a video of Sir Keir Starmer saying something he never said. This went viral, completely fabricated. Go online, you can also find videos of Keir Starmer promoting dodgy financial scams. Again, deepfake. I don't think he's saying... The scripts aren't brilliant. It's clearly not written by people with English as their first language, but I don't think Sir Keir Starmer is trying to get you to invest in his latest financial pyramid scheme. But again, deepfake came out of the leader of the opposition, apparently talking to a journalist about how to rig the election. It was later debunked as false, but that was 48 hours before people went to the polls. Will that have swayed some votes? Absolutely. There's an old proverb from the 18th century: a lie will go around the world while the truth is still putting its boots on. That's before the internet was dreamed of. People said that. Lies can now actually be transmitted around the world in seconds, and it can take days for the truth to come out. And will that just move the needle on a close election? Absolutely. And it doesn't just go one way. You'll have some politicians who are doing wrong things and have been caught out, and the video evidence surfaces, and they'll just say, well, that's a deep fake. Wasn't me. And how then can we know which is true? It's a threat to our democracy. But the other way AI is going to undermine democracy, and indeed has already started to, is more complex. Go back to AlphaGo, that AI that learned how to play Go by observing and playing millions of games. And imagine an AI called Alpha Persuade. An AI that was better at influencing and persuading and changing people's minds than any human, even the best persuader in the world, because it had observed billions upon billions of interactions online and seen what worked and seen how to persuade people. An AI that could customize its approach to every individual, taking into account their existing political views, which are pretty obvious when you look at who they follow on social media and what they post about. It takes into account your hopes and fears and things you might not even be aware of, but AI can pick up based on how long your eyes linger on certain social media posts you're scrolling past. And then it puts ads on or videos on your news feed that are perfectly designed to persuade you. Now, most people would probably not be swayed by that. We don't change our minds that often, but Alpha Persuade would successfully convince some people to switch their vote. So now who wins the election? Is it the one with the best ideas? Well, it probably isn't that anyway, but you know what I'm saying. Now it's the one who controls the best AI. It's the politician who uses AI, who has the most funding to develop an AI bot that interacts with the most people online. So misuse is one of the risks. Risk number 3 is all about transparency and truth and bias. So AI has been described a bit like a black box. You put data in, you ask it questions, it gives you answers. But because what AI is doing is so complex, with so much data so far beyond any human mind, you can't always know how it made the decision it made. So ChatGPT, a simple example, no one's ever going to be able to work out why it chose that word, because the calculations and why it gave that answer, because the calculations are so complex. But then think of the self-driving car. It's processing input from 10,000 sensors. It's analyzing the data from 1 billion different car journeys around the world. It has to take a sudden decision when a child runs into the road. Does it slow down? Does it stop? Does it swerve? Hopefully not accelerate. But how does it make that decision? Well, simple. You program it not to hit the child. But what if the only other solution is to swerve and hit the lorry coming at 70 miles per hour the other way, or swerve and hit the elderly pedestrian or the group of elderly pedestrians? The AI will make its instantaneous decision, and perhaps most of the time we'll see, yes, that was the right decision, but occasionally it will make decisions we question. And we think, well, whose fault is that? Who's accountable for that? How will we know why it made the decision when the algorithms are so complex and too complex for humans ever to understand? Even the CEO of Google, Apple, all of the top tech guys say they don't understand half of what AI is already doing. They don't understand how it made. They know what it's doing, they see it, they don't understand how it did it. So transparency is an issue. Truth, as we said before, is an issue. Has no concept of what is true. The criteria that AI is constantly trying to meet is not, am I aligned with the truth of the universe? It is, what is the most likely next word, or the next pixel, or the next piece of the language puzzle. So how this relates to reality is not a question AI is asking. And it's got this problem called confabulation, making things up. There's funny stories, perhaps you hear about them in the news sometimes, about people who use AI with work. There was one in the States. Someone asked AI to write a legal brief that could be submitted to the court. The AI wrote a legal brief that could be submitted to the court for that particular case. The legal advisor didn't check it very thoroughly. It made up all of the cases it relied on as precedent. None of them existed. And it didn't go down well with the court judge. I don't know whether that employee kept their job, but it's all because truth is not a concept that AI can understand. It doesn't have a category for it. And finally, under this risk, there's bias, because AI trains itself on information. It has all the text on the internet, all the images on the internet. It then uses those to predict all these answers on running millions upon millions of computations. But the text on the internet is not written evenly by all people from all societies. It's disproportionately written by people in a certain age demographic. You could stereotype a little bit and say most text on the internet is written by men between the ages of 20 and 40. And so the answer that AI comes back with is going to be based on the text it has found on the internet. Now, decent AI models correct for that and think, well, let's give more weight to some things than others. It's not going to give the same amount of weight to what it finds on a news website to what it finds from a random blog in a hut in America which has 6 readers. It's not going to weigh them evenly when it comes up to how to analyze data. But who makes that calculation? And how are they weighing the different inputs? We don't know, and we can't know, and that's a lot of power given away to the makers of these AI models. One more risk, and that's the risk of unintended consequences. Every technology brings with it change. We use technology to change the world, but as we do so, the technology changes us. Take the example we used earlier, simple technology, a spade used to dig in the ground. Helps you dig better, helps you dig faster, but it also changes you. You develop slightly different muscles in your arms as a result of using it. Your hands might get a bit harder and firmer so you don't get blisters. It's changing your body in some way. Well, the technology of AI changes our brains. Already this has happened. This isn't just AI. This has already happened with the advent of the internet. We no longer need to remember things the way we used to, and studies have shown that the parts of our brains that focus on recall and recollection are less honed than they were a generation ago. Since the advent of GPS, as we've become more reliant on that technology, we get lost less often. We have our sat-nav telling us where to go. Studies have shown that the part of the brain that is dedicated to spatial memory and awareness is shrinking from one generation to the next. So technology always changes us. So every new technology comes with a promise. Hey, we've got this wonderful technology. With this invention, you'll no longer have to do this. With GPS, you'll never get lost again. With this invention, you'll be able to do that. You'll be able to find your way wherever you are. But technology always comes with a cost, and it's usually an unseen cost. It's not advertised up front. It can be hard to predict, but with this invention, you'll no longer be able to do this. With GPS, your internal sense of navigation and spatial awareness will decrease. You'll get lost more often if you don't have your phone. It's the unforeseen consequences. Let's go back 20 years to the invention of Facebook. I was at university when it came out, and there was already some fledgling forms of social media before Facebook. MySpace was a big thing, but Facebook is when it properly got big. And I remember in 2004, I was at university living in a house with 5 others, and one of them, Mark, got a Facebook account. Access was really limited back then. Only certain people could get accounts. You had to get an invite from someone at a certain university, got it first. And Mark was the first person any of us knew who got Facebook. And we all mocked him. He joined this Facebook thing. It was probably a bit of jealousy, but it sounds rubbish. Who's laughing now? Facebook has billions of users. So we laughed at Mark. We thought Facebook was a bit silly. But imagine if someone had come into that room at that time and explain to us what Facebook would do to the world in the next 20 years. As a result of Facebook and other apps that copied its model, we'd have chronic addiction, information overload, shortened attention spans, a mental health crisis among teenagers, a resurgence in conspiracy theories, increased loneliness, increased fake news, distorted elections, geopolitical changes, and even genocide. If you told me that 20 years ago, I wouldn't have believed you. No one would. And it's not that these companies are evil and Mark Zuckerberg is sitting there with some evil master plan and saying, they've got no idea what I'm going to do to the world. But it's the unintended consequences from launching a product into society that has the goal of maximizing engagement. And as the algorithms got better and better, they started delivering content that divides and promotes fear and anger and violence. And that shouldn't surprise us as Christians. Because Jesus tells us, however respectable a face we put on, in the end, that's what's in the human heart. And so people are clicking on what has anger and fear and violence, and that's what we spend more and more time clicking on, and that's what keeps on getting fed back to us. Social media has been described as humanity's first contact with AI. Algorithms acting like human intelligence by working out what humans want to see when they log onto social media and giving them more of it. And in that first contact with AI, humanity didn't do so well. So generative AI, this is like the next generation. This is being described as second contact with AI. This is the ChatGPT kind of stuff. So much more powerful. But as with every new technology, it will come with unintended consequences. And one of the risks of AI is we don't know what those will be. Almost by its very nature, it's impossible to predict. So next slide. Those are some of the risks. Now, I'm not trying to get us to be all Luddite about it. Let's all throw away our phones and get rid of technology, because technology is good. We hold this together with what we've already said. But we should be aware of the risks. So we've got this wonderful story about the rise of AI, potentially terrifying story about the risks of AI. Our final step tonight is to look at God's better story. And we're going to think about the distinctive ways that Christians can understand AI. I've got 3 ways that being a Christian helps us to respond. We're going to see Christians have a better story about technology, a better story about humanity, and a better story about the future. So we've covered this a little bit as we've been going, but firstly, Christians have a better story about tech. We have a framework that helps us to understand technology better than the world does. We can hold together the good and the bad in a way that is fuller and more robust than the world is able to. We've seen God created the world, everything that is, seen and unseen. He created us to fill the earth, subdue it. The story of the Bible takes us from a garden to a city. As humans come together and grow in number and spread out and grow in number, there's an inevitability to technology to help us as responsible stewards to fill the earth and subdue it. We're creating after our Creator's heart. That's what it means to be human. And every new technology we discover, we've seen this, from magnetism to electricity to hydroelectric power, has its ingredients baked into creation by God. And it's always been his desire that we discover these things. But we also know that the Bible's not a story of plain sailing from Genesis to Revelation. We have the curse, Adam and Eve given one rule, a whole paradise to enjoy, one restriction, a world of yes, one tree of no. They're tempted. Eve eats the fruit, Adam follows suit, and God meets with them to give the punishment. Humanity's relationships now are distorted and broken, and our relationship with God broken. Our relationship with one another broken. They're not quite the happy couple they were, but also their relationship with the world around is broken. So their mandate to fill the earth and subdue it, that has been now affected by the curse. God said to Adam, "Cursed is the ground because of you. Through painful toil you will eat food from it all the days of your life. It will produce thorns and thistles for you, and you will eat the plants of the field. By the sweat of your brow you will eat your food until you return to the ground, since from it you were taken. For dust you are, to dust you will return." In that moment, it's not just about farming and weeds and thorns and thistles. It's about all that we do in fulfilling the creation mandate. It's every aspect of human life, every aspect of society, and every aspect of technology. Everything now has a choice attached. It can be used for good or for evil. And the world really struggles to grasp this. You might have noticed that the modern world doesn't really have language for it. They keep on talking about AI being used by bad actors, which is not talking about bad actors, but it's that they don't have the categories of sin or evil. As Christians, we have a better framework for understanding why humans use tech for sin and for evil. We can expect it. And we can expect everything to come with some level of frustration. The promise of this beautiful story of AI is that tech will solve all our problems. It won't. I always find this strange when watching sci-fi films. I love sci-fi. But one of the things about sci-fi is that in the future is that technology always just works. It's one of the ways they make it look futuristic. It's like it just works every time. It's seamless, it's smooth. There's none of the little niggles where your work doesn't save. Or you do a gesture to open an app on your fancy big screen where you're just controlling with this. It never opens the wrong app. And it bugs me every time. And it bugs my wife even more because I say it every time. But it's so unrealistic. The reality is, as Christians, we understand that technology has its limits and technology will always have frustration baked in until the day Jesus returns. Beyond Genesis 3, the development of technology continues for good and for ill. Boat building, wonderful technology, a means of salvation. Tower building, a means of depending on technology to reject God. Self-glorification, self-protection. And so as Christians, we can have a balanced and nuanced understanding of the goodness of technology that God intends for us to discover and use to bless the world and to love our neighbor and to care for the poor and the vulnerable. But we can also understand that technology is not the answer to all of our problems. Take 1 Timothy 6. It's a verse warning against putting your trust in money or wealth. And let's do the PUV, which is Pete's unauthorized version. Teach those who are rich in this world not to be proud and not to trust in their technology, which is so unreliable. Their trust should be in God, who richly gives us all we need for our enjoyment. Tell them to use their technology to do good. So Christians, we can prioritize the use of AI for good, for benefiting others. The tech billionaires want to use AI to extend human life, to create almost superhumans who are able to do so much more. We would love to see AI used more and more for healthcare, to help those who are weak and disadvantaged. Not to take the high and lift them higher, but to take the low and lift them up. So we don't have to buy into either of the narratives at the beginning that AI is wonderful or woeful. We can have this much more nuanced and balanced view, celebrating the good, but remembering that technology is always there to serve God. Second part of the better story, we've got a better story about humanity. We are more able to explain what makes humans different and distinct than the world is. Every year that the Royal Institution of Science, it produces a series called the Christmas Lectures. It started in 1825. It was Michael Faraday's idea. A series of lectures on a single topic. And in 2023, last year, the series of lectures was all about AI. It's available on iPlayer, YouTube. What I found fascinating was the final line of the final lecture, after 3 hours of exploring the opportunities and dangers of AI, that the lecturer, Michael Woolridge, said, AI, this is his last words, AI is not a mind. It is not like you or me. Human beings are unique. You are unique. Now, I don't know whether he has a faith, but he's speaking truth there. There is something different about humanity. We are unique. And in today's world, people aren't often clear about what makes us different from the animals. And so are we the same as them but more capable? And so they think, well, what makes us different? I know it's intelligence. That's the answer people have been coming back to for centuries now. Stephen Hawking again says, intelligence is central to what it means to be human. Everything that our civilization has achieved is a product of intelligence, from learning to master fire to learning to grow food to understanding the cosmos. But if intelligence is what makes us special, that's the secular narrative, the rise of AI is quite threatening, isn't it? What happens when you have these beings, machines, entities, whatever you want to call them, that are more intelligent than we are? Robert Song, he's a professor of Christian ethics, he says, what would it mean if there were machines that had consciousness and displayed a similar level of intelligence to that of humans? What if there were a future when we were no longer able to distinguish human beings from robots? What would that mean for human uniqueness? A lot of thinkers end up with a kind of human of the gaps mentality. Perhaps you've heard of God of the gaps. It's a criticism thrown at religion. It's the accusation that religious people basically find what science can't explain, and then they say God must be the explanation. God fills in the gaps. But that's fine until scientists do later explain it. It fills in the gaps in our knowledge, and God's role gets smaller and smaller. Well, human of the gaps is similar. What makes us truly human? And what people do is they try and find the ways that humans are different from animals, or humans are different from AI, and say, that makes us human, that's the explanation, which is fine until AI develops intelligence greater than our own, or AI begins to express emotion, or robots become so lifelike that we can't tell the difference. AI is replicating humanity better and better, and who knows what's coming. And then what makes us unique as humans just becomes less and less. Christians, we have a better explanation for humanity than that. What makes us special is not that, we have more intelligence than the animals. What makes us special is no capability that we have, but the fact that we're made in the image of God. We've been created uniquely by him. We're made in his image. It gives us a value and dignity that the world cannot match. And the dignity of every human resides not in what you can do or how capable you are or how developed or deteriorated your brain is, but in who you are, in what God has made you to be. The moment God creates you, he makes you in his image. He says, this creature has eternal significance and value. And so one of our responses to the rise of AI should be to lean into our humanity. By this I mean, God has made us to be embodied beings. We're not just minds. We're bodies, body and soul, unified whole. And many of the promised benefits of AI and technology generally, they're disembodied benefits. Teenagers play games with their friends in the virtual world, not the real one. I've got 2 teenagers, I know. AI chatbots promise to be virtual friends who are always there for you, always listening, always say what you want to hear. When you lose a loved one, you can upload all their text messages and emails and voice memos to you, to an AI bot, and it can replicate them beyond the grave. But you can never hug or high five. AI promises a virtual relationship with a virtual girlfriend who'll be everything exactly the way you want her to be. We have virtual communities with real people but disembodied connection. And that's not to dismiss that. That can be good, but virtual communities can be wonderful. But God has made us embodied and relational. I think we can learn something from the Amish here. Contrary to popular belief, the Amish don't reject all technology. They accept some things, reject others. And as a community, they do it together. They think, does this provide any tangible benefits? And then they ask, does it affect our relationships? Now, I love tech. I'm an early tech adopter. I'm as far from Amish as you can be. And I don't land in the same place as them on many things, but I think they're really good questions. How can we respond to technology in a way that builds relationships? I think it's to lean into our embodied humanity. Don't reject technology, but lean into the physical and the real and the present. Prioritize the people in the room over the people on the screen. We don't have those live, laugh, love signs in our home, but as humans, we can live, laugh, and love in a way that AI cannot. We can have compassion and empathy in a way that AI can't. This is a real argument for us to be present in people's lives. The rise of tech and AI is going to increase loneliness. As a church, let's stand against the tide. One more better story. Christians have a better story about the future. We have a framework that helps us to understand the future when the world can only offer uncertainty. At the beginning of tonight, I quoted Stephen Hawking. The development of full AI could spell the end of the human race. As Christians, we can be absolutely confident, say AI is not the end of the world. It's not the end of humanity. Will not be. We have a sovereign God. He's on the throne. History is not an out-of-control roller coaster, which is getting ever faster. So for many, the fear with AI is that you create something bigger than you can control. Maybe we already have. But we cannot create something bigger than God. Cannot create something that's out of his control. I love the famous Abraham Kuyper quote, "There is not a square inch in the whole of creation over which Christ, who is sovereign over all, does not cry, mine." I want to add to that, there is not one algorithm, not one computer, not one AI model or machine over which Christ, who is sovereign over all, does not cry, mine. So we don't know every turning point on the journey, but we know the end point of history. It will conclude with Christ reigning over all. And this is the Christ who united himself to humanity. He became human. He united himself to human flesh. He continues to sit at the right hand of the Father in the flesh. He was seen in the flesh as he went around after the resurrection, not as a ghost. And so as long as he, Jesus, the God-man, reigns, humanity will not be usurped by AI. When he returns, he will come to rule and reign in the flesh, and we will be made co-heirs, and we will reign with him. In a survey of AI researchers, 50% of them said there's at least a 10% chance that humanity will go extinct from AI. It's like imagine queuing up to board a plane. The engineers who designed the plane are there. Half of them say, there's at least a 10% chance this plane will crash. You would not get on the plane. But as Christians, yes, we need to be aware of the dangers, the risks, need to mitigate them, work with governments to bring in legislation that will help with some of these things. But we know that humanity is not ultimately at risk because God is on the throne. We're going to finish now with some questions. While you prepare your questions, hopefully you've got some, I'm briefly going to tell you what CARE are doing. This is 1 to 2 minutes. CARE's place in the story. Firstly, we equip politicians. New technology requires new laws. It's always been the case. We didn't need laws about speed limits until people invented cars. We didn't need laws about the right to be forgotten until the internet could remember us forever. The government needs to regulate AI. It needs to work out how we can do this well as a society. Even the tech companies who you'd think would say, no, don't regulate us. Every major tech company boss agrees that some form of regulation is needed in order for AI to go well. At CARE, we engage with politicians and the media and decision makers to lobby that any new laws are fair and ethical and don't undermine the Christian worldview. And we're also encouraging and equipping Christians when it comes to one of the big risks AI brings, which is what we talked about earlier, that threat to democratic elections. Christians don't always have a great reputation for what we share online. We should be bigger champions of truth than those around us, but often we share things that are false, perhaps deep fakes, without fact-checking them, without checking multiple sources to see whether what we're posting is true. And we do that maybe because we see something online and it angers us or frustrates us, And it resonates with what we already believe, which is true, and we click share or retweet or whatever, and a lie inadvertently will go around the world before the truth gets its boots on. So at CARE, we're always encouraging you to be careful what you read, be careful what you believe, be careful what you share, particularly in the run-up to a general election. At CARE, we have a website you can get information from, but also once the election's called, we'll have a special general election website as well. Do check them out. But for now, I'd love to take your questions about AI. I may not be able to answer all of them, but I'll do my best. Yes?
You mentioned the user regulation. I think I kind of fundamentally disagree in any regulations as a whole, because, like, my point of view is that giving everyone access to the ability, whilst potentially, obviously, there's massive potential for misuse, as you say, but having it regulated doesn't actually stop that misuse from being done. It just means that only certain people, like the big tech companies or governments, get to use that particular technology to misuse it. So, for example, you said about tech companies wanting to regulate, and from my point of view, that looks like a shameless sort of power grab, because a lot of tech companies want to regulate, so they can be the only ones in that sphere. Companies like OpenAI and stuff, they'll release more powerful models every few months and be like, oh, this is terrible, AGI is just around the corner. It's probably not, but the fact is they want to create that fear. This is my point of view, is that they want to create that fear so they can be the ones to be the only ones that own that sort of thing and can sell it, and they have that power to use that on their own. And I kind of see the same thing with governments as well, is that they say the government's like, right, only we can kind of have this, and it's not, you can't possibly let people use it because they use it for terrorism or they could misinformation and stuff. That doesn't prevent, the government is also human, and these governments are also human.
Yeah.
So my view of the world is that there is companies like Meta and stuff which are actually trying to open source these models, is it Llama or CCTV? They're trying to get out there as open source models, and to me that seems like the better way to go, because as I said, I feel it's better.
Yeah. If I can just pick up on that, you've raised a few points, and one of the ones you mentioned at the end was there, so a lot of these companies produce open source models. So for those not familiar, open source is basically when they release the whole model with the code, so anyone can access it, anyone can do what they want with it. And historically, that's been a really good thing for technology, because it stops power being concentrated in the person who's developed the technology. The issue with open source today, with AI, is that it makes it a lot easier to do great evil with it. So Facebook released, you mentioned Llama, I think it was the Llama 2 model. They released it, they said it had safeguards and so on, and there was another organization called the Center for Humane Technology who are basically raising awareness about AI. They were able to hack this Llama 2 model, and they basically were able to turn it into what they call a bad actor mode, and within a few hours, this Llama 2 model was able to provide them with 400 different potential chemical weapons that could be used and how to make them. Now, the AI models that are released publicly don't do that. But when you release open source, you're actually making it easier for the hackers and the unethical people to do great evil. So open source is there are pros and cons to it. The other thing I'd say just on government is I agree that, if you let the tech companies write the rules, they'll write the rules in ways that are in their favor. And similarly, if you just have a government write the rules and no questions asked, then they're going to do the same. But the alternative isn't to then, let's say, let's not regulate in any way, because you end up with a Wild West where anything can be done and there's no laws prohibiting anyone doing any of this. So I do think there needs to be some form of regulation. Now, you need to do that well. And you need to make sure that the big interests are stood up to, and it probably won't be done perfectly, and then you've got to go back and do it again. And that's the nature of life in a fallen world. But I don't think just saying let's not regulate at all is a viable option. Yeah. Let's move on. You can chat more afterwards if you want. Anyone else? Yes.
Given that St. Paul was all things to all people, and he might bring them the gospel, could you envisage an evangelist's dream of knowing exactly what to say generated by AI?
I think the biggest use for gospel spread is the translation one. I think we've got to, it's going back to one of the points I made at the end. We are not, as Christians, we're weak, and the gospel spreads through weakness. The technology can be used to spread the gospel, such as, radio spreads the gospel, the internet spreads the gospel, but I don't think we should look to AI as the big hope for the gospel. I think actually it is going to be weak people like you and me making weak arguments in bumbling ways, going home and saying, I wish I've said that, and God's, by his Holy Spirit, working in people's hearts. Now, it's not to say no use for AI, but I think it's not a holy grail. Yeah. Any more questions? Yes?
I haven't really got a question, but I got this thing where I suddenly realised that through AI, someone like, just for namesake, Adolf Hitler, could be made in a way immortal through his philosophy and also how you have this guy, you've got ABBA coming up on stage, right? So you can bring out an image of him, feed all the information of him, and then people in the future could really see him as an entity, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's how I'm talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah.
Then, I thought, AI going forward, if everything was put on the teachings of Christ, all right? Perhaps I've got a bit more advanced with what AI will be, all right? AI. But if that was all put, all the teachings of everything was put into Christ, of Christ, was put into one format, and if everybody can see in the future with AI, everybody can look upon this image as well as the technology to fill all the words, ask questions.
Well, let me say in response to that, there's already an element that's possible. There are chatbots online. I can't remember quite what it's called, like Jesus.bot or something, which you can ask your questions. It has taken all the information from the Bible and Christian teaching. It will reply in the way it thinks Jesus would reply. And you can also get it for half the apostles as well. I think, not something I recommend, but that is never going to be the same as the real Jesus. No, the miracles, the compassion, the love, the wisdom.
Sorry, but you were saying about how it generates itself.
Yes.
Perhaps they could, in the very future, perhaps there might be something there that people might get into and then realise it's all completely true. I know that's one myth, not the heart of it, but it might knock some people into sense.
Yeah, I can see that, but I think that's probably a niche scenario. So let's not go down too far down that rabbit hole. Jonathan.
If I was a 16-year-old and I was thinking about going into AI, what would you say to me?
I'd say to you that it is a very good career choice. It is, the same way sciences have always been a good career choice. Technology has always been a good career choice. I would advise you to particularly pursue computer science and go down that road. And I advise you to live for Christ in that arena, because there are many Christians in that arena. We need more. The people who design the technology, to some extent, shape it.
For example, we had an amazing treat tonight. What an overview, Pete, you've been able to give to us. And you've just shone through with your trust in God and his good designs for us. And I so appreciated the way that you left us with a reminder that Jesus is on the throne. And There is nothing new for him under this sun.
Absolutely.
And thank you for raising our hope and filling us with all that God is doing for good. Thank you. Shall we thank Pete? Thank you.
Shall I just plug these? I've just got some resources to plug. So Steve from Sunrise Bookshop is at the back selling books, and there's going to be some for each of the different talks that we're doing. This week, I really recommend John Lennox, 2084, and John Wyatt, The Robot Will See You Now, two fantastic books about AI from a Christian perspective. Also want to recommend Nigel Cameron, The Robots Are Coming. This is a book produced by Care, and it's not for sale, but we have some copies, and basically say if anyone wants to sign up for our mailing list, you can have a free copy of this book. We've got I think there's about 18, 19 copies, so once they're gone, they're gone. You can sign up either with the QR code on the signs out the back, or with one of these Please Stand With Us forms. You put your email address, you'll just get emails from us. So recommend that. I'm around to chat further, and obviously next week we've got a new location and a new topic. We're looking at God's better story for gender, and how can we understand that in today's world. So that's next week.
And that's at Buckskin Church, the other side of town. But I know that we are in very safe hands with somebody that thinks carefully, researches deeply, and brings, of course, God's heart to these questions. So once again, thank you, and you're going to be able to stay around afterwards.
Yeah, I'm not rushing off, so happy to chat more.
So thank you for your time. Buy a book and talk to Pete. Thanks.